Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games, where we feed our people with relatable content and our victory condition is your satisfaction. I'm Harry and today we have another top 10 list for you all. Today I'll be doing my top 10 board games from the year 2007. Every so often I like to focus or zero in on one year or maybe a range of years during the history of gaming. And today I'll be focusing on the year 2007, which in my humble estimation was an incredible year. Lots of these games on my top 10 from 2007 rank very, very highly on my overall top 100, even top 50 board games of all time. So without any further ado, we're going to be covering these games, going from 10 to 1, my least or 10th favorite to number 1 favorite from this time or from this year, 2007. My number 10 board game from 2007 is In the Year of the Dragon, designed by Stefan Feld and published by Ravensburger Games. This copy right here is the 10-year anniversary edition, which comes with 2 small expansion modules that you can include. The Great Wall of China, and I forget what the other one is. But this is a really interesting game. It's very mean. This is not a cooperative game that happens to be mean. This is a competitive game where even though players are competing against each other, to some extent, they're factoring in the game itself because the game is out to get you. So basically, the game consists of 12 rounds, each round representing a different month within the Year of the Dragon, which is a year of calamity, a year of disaster. And the first 2 rounds are actually pretty straightforward. Nothing happens in the first 2 rounds. The first 2 rounds are kind of to give players an opportunity to get a feel for the game and to prognosticate what's going to happen going forward, because all 12 rounds are set up from the very beginning, so you know exactly what's going to happen, what calamity, what disastrous event is going to hit you in which round. So the players use the first couple rounds to set themselves up, to gather and acquire the necessary workers in order to withstand some of these calamities. Here's the thing about this game. So basically you have famine, you have disease, you have war, you have all these terrible things that can happen, taxation, but you cannot prepare for all of them. It's impossible to prepare for all of them. Some of them are going to get to you. Some of them are going to hit you. Some of them are going to hurt and devastate you. And you kind of have to pick your poison. But to some extent, you're focusing on the immediate future, right? What do the next couple months have, right? Let me try to withstand these next couple of months so that when their calamities hit, I can tolerate them. And then maybe going forward, I could prepare for some of the more subsequent or future calamities that are ahead. But again, you cannot prepare for all of them. So it's really interesting making those decisions and making the sacrifices, losing points in one area in order to gain points perhaps in another area. Lots of point salad, if you will, from a Stefan Feld game. But again, with that mean aspect, if you do not like mean games, games that put you through the ringer, games that really make you grind your teeth and gnash your teeth and basically, you know, bite your nails, this is not a game for you. This game is excruciatingly painful and frustrating at times. But if you're up for that challenge, right, and you want to keep on playing and trying to outperform or outdo yourself with each subsequent play, this is absolutely a good opportunity for that. It's not much of a looker. Ravensburger games tend to not be the prettiest games, and this being a 2007 publishing is definitely not an exception to that rule. But it gets the job done. It's a fun Stefan Feld game from 2007. My number 10 2007 game, In the Year of the Dragon. Now we move on to my number 9 board game from the year 2007. And this is a fun one, folks. That is Jamaica. And this is designed by Malcolm Brath, Bruno Cathala, and Sebastian Pauchon. And published by GameWorks Games. This game is a pirate-themed racing game where players each take the role of a pirate ship racing around the island of Jamaica, trying to be the first player to make it to Port Royal, which is the finish line, so to speak. Because whoever makes it to Port Royal first, or makes it to Port Royal, is going to get 15 coins and very likely will win the game. However, there are a lot of other factors going on, because as pirate ships confront each other or end up on the same spots in the board, they engage in conflict, and there will be a winner, and whoever wins gets to take one of the holds that all of the goods that are in one of the holds of the opponent's ship. So they could take a bunch of gold or a bunch of food or a bunch of, you know, gunpowder for their cannons, whatever it is. that they happen to have in one of those holds and the ones that they prefer to choose. There are also, pirates are racing to these secret caves that are one-off opportunities for players to explore the hidden treasure there, right? And sometimes these hidden treasures can be very positive things. They could be things that give you lots of secret points heading into the end of the game. But sometimes they might actually be curses that actually subtract points from your total score at the end of the game. So again, you have all of these things factored into your end game winning condition. You've got the race, you've got the gold that are going to count as points towards you, towards the victory at the end of the game. And again, you have these hidden treasures that you're trying to be lucky, a little bit of press your luck, hope that you draw the right card. All these things are things that you're factoring into that winning condition. But however, the gameplay is very interesting because this is basically program action selection, program movement. Players are choosing their cards simultaneously, face down, and then they're revealing them and playing them out in clockwise order. But you don't know what your players chose. You don't know what they don't know what you chose. And basically your cards let you make a certain amount of actions, either move or gain certain resources according to a die roll that's going to take place at the beginning of the round. And there's going to be one die roll assigned to your morning action and one die roll assigned to your evening action. And each of your action program cards have sides corresponding to those morning and evening actions. So the left side, for example, will have an action, and that will be whatever your morning action will be, and it will correspond to whatever the morning action die was rolled. And then the right side of your card is going to be your evening action, and you will do that as many times equal to the number that was rolled on the evening die. So you're factoring all those things in based on the current active player. They roll the morning and evening dice. The active player makes the choice of which one they want to be evening and which one they want to be morning. And then the players, all based on that information, make your decision. It's really, really cool because you only have 3 cards, generally speaking, to pick from. So you don't have an endless amount of options. So you've got to pick with what you have and also know the probabilities of which cards will most likely be coming up in future turns. Really cool. Predicting what your players are going to do. It's very lighthearted fun, but at the same time, a mechanically sound game. Family weight. Jamaica, my number 9 board game from 2007. Now we move on to my number 8 board game from 2007, and that's 1960, The Making of a President, designed by Jason Matthews and Christian Leonard, published by GMT Games. This is a fun, politically themed game where players each take on the role of one of the presidential candidates, either John F. Kennedy or Richard Nixon. And the fact that this is over 60 years removed allows us to create some distance from this, right? We don't have to be invested in either side. But this game is really cool. There's a lot of neat mechanisms that are taking place. You have a hand of 5 cards that you draw each turn. And then you're going to be playing those cards. And basically you have 2 options. You could either use those cards for their special abilities, and those special abilities usually benefit you in some ways. Sometimes they even hurt and attack your opponent and his or her campaign. And so instead of using those cards for their actions, you could actually use them for campaign points. And what campaign points allow you to do is they allow you to put cubes, which represent your influence, which represent your supporters, those who are going to vote for you. They allow you to place cubes on different states that you're trying to win majorities for, that you're trying to secure leads for, that you're trying to compete with other opponents, your other opponent who might actually be favored over there. You might want to take away their cubes by adding your presence to that location, right? But also, the board, which consists of a map of the United States, is divided into 4 regions, right? You have this northeastern region, the southwest here, the midwest, and then the far west right here. And you've got all these sections, and you can move freely within any given region. So if I'm within the northeast, I can move to New York, to New Hampshire freely. It's not going to cost me a thing. But if I want to move from the northeast to any state in the Midwest, for example, I'm going to need to spend at 1 campaign point in order to make that move. If I wanted to make it all the way to the west over here from the Northeast, I would have to spend 2 campaign points to make it there. And again, these cards that you're spending have a certain amount of these campaign points. And managing that travel in a way that you could still have enough campaign points left over to actually place cubes, your presence, your influence, your voters, so to speak, back into those states you know, managing and budgeting that is so neat, so intricate, and so cool. There's so many things going on. You're manipulating the media, right? And the media gives you certain benefits. There's a little bit of push your luck sometimes when you're randomly drawing cubes from a bag and seeing if they're either, you know, voters for you or voters for your opponent. Factoring all these things is really, really cool. And again, it's a little bit very historic, lots of flavor text and information within all of these cards that kind of brings you to this time, which was a very interesting time in U.S. history. My number 8 board game from 2007, 1960, The Making of a President. And now we move on to my number 7. And my number 7 is Ticket to Ride, Nordic Countries. And I love Ticket to Ride. And Nordic Countries is probably not my favorite map, but I do like it a lot. It has a lot of the neat elements that Ticket to Ride Europe has. It has a very long route that you're trying to build. I think it has a route of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A route of 9, which is even bigger than the route of 8 that you find in Ticket to Ride Europe. It has lots of the other concepts from Ticket to Ride Europe, like the tunnels and the ferries, which is really, really cool. And it's an interesting map, very tight. This is a 2 to 3 player only game. You cannot play with 4 players. And even at 2 players, it feels way more tight than your typical Ticket to Ride game does at 2 players. So, really cool with an emphasis on mostly north to south travel, not as much east to west. But again, I'm a big fan of Ticket to Ride. This edition here is a fun, lovely one. I love the colors. It adds purple and white as player colors that none of the other games have. That might be a stupid reason to really like a game, but the fact is I love the Ticket to Ride system, and this is a great iteration of it. My number 7 board game from the year 2007, Ticket to Ride, Nordic Countries. And now we move on to my number 6. And my number 6 is Notre Dame, another Stefan Feld game, another 10-year anniversary game published by Ravensburger. This game, I really love this game, guys. I mean, the only reason it's number 6 is because of how much more I love the top 5. But this is a great, phenomenal Stefan Feld game. Year of the Dragon is a good game. This is a great game, and it's so underrated. And again, it is not much of a looker. I would say this is even probably worse looking than in the Year of the Dragon. I mean, me, for one, I like the idea of the modular board that you set up according to the player count. I just don't like the direction in which they went, not only with the shape of the modular boards, but I don't like the direction in which they went with the coloring and the graphic design. It's just, it does not attract, it does not really appeal. But it's really cool because you're placing these cubes down in these different areas, these different sectors in Notre Dame or in your section of Notre Dame. And you're doing this based on a card draft. Players are drafting cards at the beginning of their turn to grant them a certain amount of actions. And you're always going to have 3 cards each round, but you're only going to be able to play 2 of those. So you're only going to get 2 of those actions. But it's good to have that third one just in case mid-turn you may change your mind as to what you're going to do, right? So it's good to have that. But the point is, when you play these cards, they allow you to place these influence cubes, and each player has cubes in their own color. These influence cubes into different sectors that basically trigger abilities. It's in essence a worker placement game, right? In disguise. You place these cubes, and what happens is when you place a cube into a certain sector within Notre Dame, you activate that sector's ability equal to the amount of times, or as many times equal to the amount of cubes you've placed there. So if you only place 1 cube, you'll activate that ability 1 time. But if you've placed 3 cubes there, then you'll activate that ability 3 times. So it accumulates as the game progresses. But sometimes you have to make very tight decisions and remove cubes because there's penalties, just like in the Year of the Dragon. This is a very brutally mean game where you have the Black Plague that's a constant threat, and it makes you lose victory points, and it also makes you lose influence or cubes from your board. You also have a tight decision because you always have a limited supply as to how many cubes you have in your active supply in order to place on the board. So constantly throughout the game, you're trying to acquire more cubes from the main supply into your personal supply. But sometimes you have to make the tough decision of playing an action which requires a cube, but you have no additional cubes left over in your personal supply, so you're going to have to move one of the currently placed cubes somewhere else, which kind of slows down the momentum that you might be trying to build somewhere else. So you're factoring all these things in. Sometimes you're trying to go to the hospital because you're trying to recover from the illness, from the Black Plague, right? And you're also preparing so at the end of the round you incur less damage because of that. You're balancing all these things, but you can never do enough. just like in the Year of the Dragon. But again, the idea of those cubes multiplied and accumulating over and over again, it is really, really cool. You even have a really nice set collection where you're moving this, this car around. You're moving this car around, this horse and carriage kind of thing, all over the towns and to the different marketplaces all over Notre Dame. And you're collecting these different colored tokens that are face down, but you don't know what's on the other side. You have an idea because there's only 4 possibilities, but you don't know what quite is there. So it's a little bit of a mystery, a little bit of an exploration feel to it. Really cool, lots of cool elements. Doesn't take too long. You have some really neat character cards that appear at the end of each round that not only tell you what the plague track will advance at the end of the round, but it also gives you an opportunity to pay 1 coin at the end of each round to trigger one of those 3 possible characters and their benefits and abilities. Really cool game again. Comes with a small little expansion of additional character cards for the 10-year anniversary. My number 6 board game from 2007, Notre Dame. And now we move on to my top 5, the cream of the crop. And my number 5 is Race for the Galaxy, designed by Thomas Lehman and published by Rio Grande Games. This game is a phenomenal science fiction game where players are building their intergalactic empire consisting of eventually 12 cards. If you trigger the end game, one of the ways of triggering the end game is having a tableau of 12 or more cards. But basically your empire consists of 2 types of cards. You have your technological development cards and you have your planets, right? And there's 2 types of planets. There's production planets and there's non-production planets. And even within production planets, you have military planets and planets that are acquired through colonization, right? So you're trying to play all these cards down into your tableau. And the way you do it is you choose actions at the beginning of your turn. You have a separate deck of cards, which are your action cards. And each player is choosing these cards. And basically, very similar to Puerto Rico, variable phase order, where if you pick one of the action cards, you get a certain bonus for it. But everybody else gets to do that same action you picked. They just won't get the bonus, right? And you're trying to speculate and calculate and predict and anticipate what your opponent or opponents are going to decide, right? Because theoretically speaking, if you can get more actions, more bang for your buck, that's what you want. So you're factoring all those things in, but you're also factoring in their bonuses and how meaningful they are to you. Really cool, really intricate system. There is a lot of iconography and symbology in this game that makes it a little bit difficult to pick up, a little bit difficult to teach to other people. It's definitely a kind of game that it takes a few plays, and by few, I mean a good amount of plays, before you kind of start memorizing and internalizing all the information that's in it. But once you do, it's a smooth process and basically a filler of a game. I feel like this game plays in 25 to 30 minutes once you're playing with people that know how to play the game, once you cross that bridge. And once you get there, it is so fun, so satiating, so satisfying to play this game for those 25 to 30 minutes. My number 5 board game from 2007, Race for the Galaxy. And my number 6 is Cuba, designed by Michael Renek and Stefan Stadler and published by Rio Grande Games. This is another game that includes variable phase order. Each player has, they do their own turns separately, but basically you have 5 different character cards that you're choosing from, and you're only going to pick 4 on each given round, and the last card that you pick, that you play, is important because the last card will determine who's going to be the first player for the next turn. And the one card that you left unplayed is even more important because it's going to give you a certain amount of votes towards Parliament. Because at the end of each round, you have a Parliament phase where the winner of the Parliament vote, the player who contributed the most votes through their unplayed card plus auctioning of any additional coins, that player is going to take 2 potential bills out of 4 potential options, and they're going to pass 2 of those into laws. And basically, the way those laws work is they're going to get benefits in the form of victory points for the players. So obviously, the player who makes that decision is going to choose the laws that benefits their game, that benefits their advantage, that corresponds with the resources that they may or may not have, right? And it's really cool because every round you're just trying to do all the decisions basically to accrue all these different types of goods, these different types of products and resources so that you could build your buildings. There's a lot of city building going on in this game, but also those goods that you're going to ship to the different ships, and all the different ships have a different supply and demand. They're basically cards that you shuffle up, and you're always going to have 3 ships available at harbor at the same time. And you're basically, they vary in how many victory points they're giving to you. So you're going to look at the ship that gives you the most victory points, and ultimately that's going to be the one that you prefer to fill up. But you might settle for some of the other ones in order to get additional victory points. Really cool. So much things going on. A nice, neat supply and demand market that you always have to factor in, that you always have to calculate as you're purchasing goods from it, as you're selling goods to it. Nice, cool, little neat things. You got this player grid, this hacienda, which has all the resources you're going to produce. And it's also where you're going to place your buildings as you build them. You have a little worker that you're going to place that's going to produce goods. But also, wherever you place him, all the places, all the spots that intersect with him, they're going to be the places you activate for resource production. Later on, if you use your foreman, those are going to be the spots that you activate for their building powers. Really cool, really neat game. Beautiful board designed by artist Michael Menzel. Awesome. My number 4 board game from 2007, Cuba. Now we move on to my number 3. And my number 3 is Colosseum, designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Marcus Lupke. And this is published by Tasty Minstrel Games. This edition, the original edition, was by Days of Wonder. This game is a phenomenal auction game where players are basically putting on these performances, these theatrical events. And you have all of these different scripts that you're purchasing throughout the game, and they all come with different requirements of resources, tokens, that are represented in the form of tokens in this game. You have actors that you need, you have animals that you need, you have scenery and different props and objects that you might need in order to fulfill it. And throughout the game, you're going through these different auctions, and the auctioning is nice and neat. There's even some trading going on between the players, and you're trying to accrue as many of these resources or these tokens as possible in order to complete and meet the needs of these plays. Because in order to capitalize and get as many points as possible for each of these theatrical performances, you need to have as many of those tokens as possible. As a matter of fact, I think the most you could be missing is 4. I think if you're missing more than 4 of the tokens that are required on the script there, then you're not going to score anything. But with every token that you're missing, you're going to have a few less spectators coming to watch a performance. And at the end of the day, your spectators are your victory points. That's how you score for these performances. And you have a lot of different ways of adding to your spectators. You could buy season tickets, which represent more spectators coming. You can roll a die and hope that you get a senator, a consul, or even the emperor himself to come visit your Colosseum and watch your performance. And again, that adds to the spectators and the views that you get. And what's interesting about this game is this game plays in 5 rounds, and there is no cumulative score. Your score is equal to the best performance, the round in which you performed the best and scored the highest. That is it. That sometimes might be even your 3rd round. Chances are, if your 3rd round was your highest score, you're not going to win. But it's possible to win with your 4th round, and 5th round is the most likely to produce a win for you. But it's so cool because you're just constantly trying to make that money in order to up your game and step up your performance so that each performance hopefully is better than the previous one. Really cool, great mechanisms, auction bidding, trading, resource management, and again, just fulfilling these missions, so to speak, in the scripts of these different theatrical events that are actually based on real stories and tragedies and performances from days of old, from Roman times. My number 3 board game from 2007, Colosseum. Now we move on to my number 2. And my number 2 is Agricola, designed by Uwe Rosenberg and published by Mayfair Games. This classic worker placement game about building a farm and growing your family and feeding your people. And this game is so tight, so stingy. I guess that's the theme of this year, 2007, because in the Year of the Dragon is pretty stingy. Notre Dame is pretty stingy. Ticket to Ride Nordic countries, probably the stingiest of the Ticket to Ride maps. Race for the Galaxy and Colosseum even are pretty stingy. Cuba is pretty stingy. These are stingy games, I guess. Very tight games where you will pay for bad decisions, where you do have to factor in lots of things. You're never going to get the feeling of prosperity and wealth. It's just the challenge of survival, the challenge of moderate growth. All these things keep you going in order to keep playing the game. But I love it. Very satisfying. I love the theme within the game. I don't want to be a farmer in real life, but in the game, this is really cool. The card play is amazing. We always start the game with a draft of 10 potential minor improvement cards and 10 potential occupation cards. We choose 7 out of them, out of each of those respective decks. So we have 14 cards going forward. And the truth is, you're never going to play more than like 3 to 7, 8 of those cards out of those 14. More likely than not, you're probably going to hover around the 5 to 6 range. But as the game progresses, that's when you're deciding which of those 14 cards are going to be among the 5 or 6 you play. And as the game progresses and you react to different situations, different circumstances, you make those decisions. And trying to, first of all, strategize pre-game as to which cards you want, and also mapping it out and then actually carrying it out to fruition when you do so successfully is such a fun and satisfying feeling. Yes, there's lots of scoring restrictions, but I like that because it forces you to focus on other areas. Sometimes as a player, you can just fall into this trap of doing the same thing over and over again. Again, some people don't like that. They feel like they're being pigeonholed into playing the game in a particular way. That has not been a problem for me. Really cool, really beautiful pieces. We have some upgrade pieces from some expansions. Lots of content out there. I have I think it's the Go 7 Gaming, or maybe it's the Broken Token box insert for this game, because there's a lot of content to keep in here, a lot of wood, a lot of cards. But this has been such a fun, enjoyable experience. My wife absolutely adores this game, and absolutely for me, the fact that she loves this game absolutely increases its value for me, just to be honest and truthful about it. But even so, it's a brilliant, amazing game, and that's why it's been successful for so many years. My number 2 board game from 2007, Agricola. Now we move on to my number 1. And my number 1 game from 2007 is Kingsburg, designed by Andrea Chiarvesio and Luca Iannacco, and published by Z-Man Games. And this is an upgraded edition. I guess that's a story about a lot of my games here. These are upgraded editions. And some people don't like the graphic design here, but I'm perfectly content with it. Kingsburg is a worker placement game, dice placement game, in which your dice are your workers. You're rolling dice throughout the game, and the numbers that you roll determine what spots you can choose from as you place this down. It's really cool because this is a city building game as well. A lot of the games that I like and have chosen here have that aspect of city building. You definitely have that in Cuba. You have some of that in Agricola on a smaller scale. You have some of that in Race for the Galaxy on a larger scale. And here you got it as well. Players are building their section of the town or the city of Kingsburg, and they're preparing for the incoming invasions, because this game plays throughout 5 rounds, which are 5 years, and each of the years have 4 seasons. And at the end of the winter season of each round, you're going to have some sort of enemy attack you. It might be goblins, it might be orcs, right? It might be zombies, it might be any of these terrible creatures. And I'm not sure if zombies are in this game. And they each have different casualties and different strength levels that you need to meet. So at the whole game, you're placing your dice in places to accrue goods in order to build buildings that give you victory points, but also protect you from the incoming forces, that allow you to cheat and mitigate the dice rolling as well. But you're also placing your workers on spots that allow you to increase your military strength, right? Because your military strength is going to determine whether or not you can withstand the onslaught from these invasions, right? So many really cool things going on. City building, resource management, worker placement, some dice, lots of neat, cool little ways of mitigating the dice rolls so that you feel like there's something you could do, so that you could feel like there's you're in some control. This edition here comes with the To Forge a Realm expansion, which includes like 5 different expansion modules, and I think they even included a new expansion module that was not part of the original expansion. Beautiful, wonderful, fun, exciting game. I always have a great time playing it. My number 1 board game from 2007, Kingsburg. And that's it, folks. Those are my top 10 games from the year 2007. Comment down below. Tell me what your favorite game from this year is. What do you think about my selection of 10? Perhaps you agree with some of them. Perhaps you totally disagree with others. Perhaps you're confused as to why there's some games that I did not even mention or include on this list. I am interested in reading what you guys have to say. This is Harry from When Harry Met Board Games saying take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have fun gaming. Bye-bye.